Hey, it's Pastor John with your midweek moment for this week. And let me say, I'm glad to have Levon back behind the camera this week. He was on vacation, which is why, well, you're going to get a midweek moment this week. You didn't get one last week, and that's why. But now Levon's back, and so here we are. And what I'd like to talk to you about a little bit today is the cat. Y'all know I've got this cat. Her name is Buttercup. She used to be Dad's cat. In a couple of weeks, apparently, she's going to be my niece's Grace's cat. But for the time being, she's sort of my cat. And Buttercup and I, as you know, if you watch the midweek moments regularly, have had sort of a difficult relationship at first. Coming to Connecticut, or Dad's moving, I should say, and then coming to Connecticut was a very traumatic event for her. And for the first 3 weeks, as I think I mentioned a couple of weeks ago, all she did was hide. I never saw her. I knew she was alive because food kept disappearing out of her dish and there was stuff in her litter box. But other than that, I had no clue about her existence whatsoever. And we get along much better now. And I think one of the things, as a side benefit of our better relationship is she stopped shedding so much. I mean, for the first month that she was in the house, I mean, my gosh, there were just like tumbleweeds of orange cat fur all over the house. And I think now that she's settled down and she's not so stressed, she's not quite as sheddy as she was before, which is nice. But we do get along much better now. And occasionally she'll even jump up on my lap. If I stand up and I take a couple of steps, she still runs away. But, except for that, we seem to get along fine. But like I said, my time with Buttercup is apparently coming to an end. And since, we're coming to the middle of the summer and Grace is apparently ready to come back from Wisconsin and she and Audrey, her girlfriend, have found an apartment, in the city for the fall. So, like I said, in a couple of weeks, it looks like, I will be giving, Buttercup the cat to Grace. And I suppose the last thing I have to do before I turn her over is I've got to take her to the vet, because even though Buttercup is, we think, 8-ish years old, she's never been to the vet. My father's excuse for never taking her to the vet was that she was an inside cat, and that since she was an inside cat, she couldn't get sick. I don't know if that's true or not, but Grace and Audrey want her checked out, so that's what I'll do. And to do that, I need a cat carrier. And I sent out an email about this earlier today, but just in case you don't see the email. Now, of course, I mean, when Buttercup came, she came in a cat carrier. It's not like she was just like running around loose in the back of my car for 3 hours. But the cat carrier she came in was like the smallest size one, the one that's like this big. And Buttercup as a cat is about this big. So when she's in the cat carrier, there's not even enough room for her to turn around, which I think is one of the reasons the trip to Connecticut was so hard on her. So what I'd like the next size bigger cat carrier. So I go to Petco and I go to price a cat carrier, and those things cost, it's just a plastic box, but it was like $100 for the cat carrier. And if you want to put the pad in the bottom so the cat is comfortable, it's another $30. Which is why I sent out the email earlier today asking if there's anybody who has a cat carrier that they're not using, because if you do, and you're not using it and you'd like to get rid of it, I would be happy to take it off your hands. But that's just the sidelight. The main thing is that in my time with Buttercup, I've learned something about myself. And the thing that I think I've learned is that in this world, there are essentially two kinds of people. As I've mentioned before, there are all sorts of ways that you can divide the world into two sorts of people. But one of the ways that you can divide the world into two sorts of people is you can say that there are cat people and there are dog people. Now, this does not mean that there are not cat people who don't like dogs, because there are, and this doesn't mean that there are not dog people who do not like cats, because that is certainly true. But I think it is true that there's nobody who likes cats and dogs exactly the same. I think there are some people who like cats more and they're cats people, and there's some people who like dogs more and they're dog people. And what I have learned by having a cat living in my house is that I am a dog person. That's not to say that I've got anything against Buttercup as a cat. In fact, and at this point, really my only major complaint with Buttercup is that she's not a dog, because I've had dogs in the past. And I will admit that my view of dogs is probably skewed by the fact that my last dog, Mango, was essentially the perfect dog. She was a Labrador Retriever who I was a foster parent for her. She was from Guiding Eyes for the Blind over in Patterson. And what they do in their foster program is that all the dogs get obedience training and all that sort of stuff before they go to your house. So Mango was basically a turnkey dog. In fact, they had to train me for several weeks so that I was able to properly take care of Mango. And the thing about her was, Mango was essentially perfect. And my favorite thing about Mango was that she was absolutely silent. Mango and I were together for 7 or 8 years, and I think in that entire time she barked once. Buttercup, on the other hand, is a yowling sort of animal, makes a lot of noise. Another thing that was great about Mango was that I came home and she was standing there by the door, wagged her tail and all that sort of stuff, and I gave her, petting and scratching and rubbing on the belly and all that sort of stuff, and then I went my way and she went hers, and everything was fine. And so just for one reason or another, I'm just a dog person and not a cat person. That does not mean that I'm anti-cat. If you're a cat person, that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. I think it's just great that you're a cat person. I'm just a dog person, and that's the way it is in life. We just have preferences. We all have some things that we like and other things that we don't like. And that's one of the things that makes us all interesting and makes us all unique. But it can make living together a little bit of a challenge sometimes. When you have one person who really likes one thing and another person who really likes another, you can come into conflict about that sometimes. It's the sort of thing that happens, with dogs and cats. It's the sort of things that can happen in a family sometimes, sort of thing that can happen among even the best of friends. And it happens at work, it happens at church, it happens in school. We have conflicts all the time, and we think that those conflicts are about things that are really, really vitally important. But a lot of times what they're really about is just preferences. They're really just about the fact that you like something and the other person doesn't. And I think, there's a lesson in that. I think it's helpful, that we recognize that just because we like something, that does not necessarily make it eternally right. Just because you like ice cream, I don't know, that doesn't mean that cake is, how could ice cream, no one would think that ice cream and cake could possibly be bad. That's a bad example. But you get my point, right? Just because you like something, that does not make that the only thing. Just because you like, driving to work one way, that doesn't mean that every other way of driving to work is wrong. Just because you like to do things one way at work, that doesn't mean that the guy in the cubicle next to you who does things a completely different way is wrong. Just because you may like one thing in church and somebody else likes something else, that doesn't mean that person's wrong. It just means they're different. And I think, we'd have a lot less conflict in our lives if we would recognize, if we'd be able to separate the differences that are really, really, really important, because some of them are, from the differences that are really just matters of opinion. And learn to recognize that, just because we have an opinion, that doesn't necessarily make that opinion right. And I suppose maybe there'd be a lot fewer conflicts between dog and cats people if we would recognize that that's true. Because, that's just the way the world is. You got some dog people and you got some cat people. You got some baseball people and you got some football people. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong when people like different things than you do. There's nothing wrong when people disagree about things. It doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just means that they're different. And maybe in the world we live in today and in the country we live in today, we could do ourselves a lot of good if we would try to keep that in mind. So I guess that's about it for this week. So thanks for tuning in.